Welcome to toy-polloi.
Hello and welcome to another video from toy-polloi. If you've watched some of my recent videos, you'll have seen that I got in a large amount of Action Man stuff as a sort of mega restoration challenge. And today we're going to take a look at one of the figures, which is the deep sea diver, as you can see here in front of me. Now this was very kindly sent into toy-polloi by a subscriber of this channel. As you can see, it's a little bit worse for wear, so this is going to be the first part of probably 2 or 3 videos on how to restore this Action Man. I think the first thing we've got to do is to sort of take the figure apart and start getting him looking good. As you can see here, he's got a pretty beaten up face. It's very dirty and has got paint and ink and all sorts of grime all over it. He's also incredibly floppy, so we're going to have to take him apart and re-string him. So first up, let's take his costume off and we'll see what sort of condition the body is in. Without the costume on, we get to see a much clearer picture of what's gone on with this figure. The main issues really are the fact that his face is pretty battered. His hair is very dirty as well. He's obviously lost both his hands. This is because the hands are made of a sort of a rubberized plastic that perishes over time. He's also really floppy, and the reason for that is that these figures are held together with a sort of elasticated string, if you can see in there, and over the time that's lost its sort of elasticity and has now gone very loose. So his lower body is quite floppy. The knees and joints are actually pretty tight. It's just the sort of the hip joints, and also the bit of elastic that goes through to hold his arms in place again has got very loose. So really the first thing we're going to do is we're actually going to take him fully apart so that we can clean him, and really the only way to take him apart is to get a knife, and we are going to cut this old elastic so that he can fall apart completely. This seems a little bit brutal, but we do have to do this, and we can re-string him in the end. So once we cut that piece, you can see that the legs now start to fall off. Should be able to pull the rest of it because the head is held on by the same piece of elastic. Actually, if I just cut this as well, like so, then the whole body starts to fall apart. We can start to prise all the bits out. You can see the old elastic inside, and likewise the arms are held together with one piece of elastic. So if I just get the scalpel onto that and then cut that as well, like so, then the arms should just pull off as well. So now he's all in pieces. Now that the figure is in pieces, he's a lot easier to deal with and will be a lot easier to clean. There's one last bit that we need to remove before we do clean him. The original elastic was held on to the upper part of the leg using a sort of a little sort of circular bit of metal. As you can see here, that the metal is clamped onto the elastic. We're not actually going to use that when we come to re-string him, so we can get rid of that completely. So I'm just going to use a pair of wire cutters here to carefully cut that. It's fairly rusted on this one. This guy's obviously been in the water before, so hopefully it shouldn't be too hard to break this little bit of metal. Sometimes they're a little bit awkward to cut, but it should be easy enough to break. And then we can bend it and remove this from the leg. Like so, I've managed to split it. Let's see if we can get that off. Again, all of this stuff is easy enough to do. It's just a little bit fiddly with the camera in the way. Without the camera you can do these things very quickly. Oh, there you go, that's better. So we should be able to pull that out. We'll do the same on the other leg. So now he's ready to be cleaned. For the most part of this, I'm just going to be cleaning him in hot soapy water and use a toothbrush to gently sort of brush away any ground in dirt. When it comes to the hair, I'm going to try and, again, I'll just use a toothbrush or a gentle brush just to pull out all of these bits of old fluff, and that should improve quite a lot. And then whatever's left, maybe even just a little bit of sellotape just to sort of pull off some of the old bits of fluff, but most of it is quite loose. And then once he's all clean, we can deal with his face. So let's go and get this guy washed up. So after having a good wash, he's already starting to look a lot better. A lot of the main sort of dirt marks have gone away. Obviously his face is still pretty rough, but actually the hair is starting to look quite nice. As you can see, I managed to get a lot of the fluff away, and the hair is not looking too bad at all. So before I go ahead and do any more work on him, I'm actually going to give the rest of his body a clean with lighter fluid. I find lighter fluid removes an awful lot of sort of finer marks and sort of pen marks and pen rubs and stuff. So I've got a bit of kitchen towel here. I'm just going to squirt some lighter fluid onto this and then gently rub over sort of areas that have got marks on, and this should remove any others that are sort of easily got rid of, anything that is a sort of surface blemish, and we should be able to get him looking a lot better. It's a fairly mundane job doing this, but it is worth doing. As you can see, you can already see quite a lot of dirt coming off onto the bit of kitchen towel. For finer areas, I'm going to be using some Q-tips, especially on his face, just to get in any of the sort of nooks and crannies that are on his face. But overall, just a bit of kitchen towel will do the job quite nicely. Even with a small amount of cleaning like this, you can see the amount of dirt that comes out of the inside of these legs, especially around the sort of the rusty sort of fixings and little rivets and stuff that are in there. So it's certainly worth doing. You can see that's quite a lot of cleaner on the inside. So now the last thing I've got to do is the head, and again I'm going to get a clean Q-tip or cotton bud as we call them here in the UK. Put a bit of lighter fluid on that, and then just gently work around his face. Try and get some more of this dirt out before we try and deal with the ink marks. For removing the ink stains that are on his face, I'm going to be using some Oxy 10 spot cream. Now, I've covered this before in some of my Star Wars action figure restoration videos. This stuff works pretty well on removing ink stains. It doesn't remove all types of ink, but it should remove most. As you can see here, having cleaned the face, it's actually only a few areas that really have the ink stains. There's a bit on his top lip and his lower lip, and then there's sort of a slight blue tinge on this side of his face, a little bit on his forehead, and a little bit more down this side. There is a little bit on the underside, but I think overall it's mainly the sort of front part is the worst offender. So what we're going to do is we're going to put some Oxy 10 over these areas and then let it sit on the face for a few days. If it dries out, you need to replace it with some more Oxy 10. Just wash it off and keep replacing it, and it will slowly fade. It does take a long time though. So I'm just going to use a cotton bud here to get a bit of the Oxy on here, and then I'm just going to carefully put it on the offending areas like so, and do this all over the face. To stop this drying out while it's sort of on the face, I'm going to then cover this in a bit of cling film so that he stays so this sort of Oxy should stay moist and not dry out, and hopefully in a few days, you know, it can take up to 5 days. This should work, and we should see that his face is back to just a sort of a nice normal pink colour. But you do have to be patient. So now his face is liberally coated in the Oxy. I've got a piece of cling film here. I'm just going to gently wrap this around so that he is sort of fairly airtight in there, because what we want is that we don't want the Oxy to dry out. We just want it to sit on the plastic like so, and let it do its job. If you don't cover it in cling film, it tends to dry out very quickly, and you have to replace it and sort of every few hours really. But if you keep it like this, it should work its magic, and we'll give this a few days and we'll see how it looks then. While I'm waiting for the Oxy to work its magic on the ink on the head, I'm going to carry on and try and get the costume clean. As you can see here, this is the sort of the main part of the diving outfit, and it's not in too bad a condition. Some of the threads and bits have come undone. As you can see here, the elastic that's used to hold it onto the foot has come unsewn, and also there's a bit of unstitching going on here on the neck. But the worst part of it is the fact it's got lots of little stains and marks over it. It's a fairly yellowed colour. I think the original was a slightly sort of off-white colour, so it's not too bad, but it's these little brown stains that are the sort of the worst part of it. There's actually more on the back. They look sort of like either a bit of mould or a bit of sort of rust staining. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to give this outfit a good wash in some hot water with a little bit of soap in it, just to rinse out as much of the grit and sort of dirt as I can. And then a trick that I've heard a lot about but never actually tried is to use some denture tablets. As you can see here, there's stuff that you use to clean false teeth. The idea is that you put this in a little tub with one of these and leave it for half an hour, and it should remove much more of the staining. These have a sort of mild bleach element to them, and so it should hopefully clean this up. So let's go and give that a try. First off, we're going to give this a wash, and then I'm going to put it in a little tub with one of these Sterident tablets, and we'll see how we get on. It's now been 2 days since I put the first load of Oxy 10 on the Action Man head. As you can see, it's starting to look a lot better. The ink is certainly starting to fade. Some of the lighter areas have already gone back to being almost completely flesh toned, and the worst areas, which were obviously around his mouth where the moustache had been drawn on and a beard, are looking an awful lot better. There's still a little bit of a dark mark under his nose there, but most of it is starting to go. So I'm going to put another load of Oxy 10 on this and wrap it in cling film, and we'll leave it another couple of days, and hopefully by then most of this should have gone and the head will look pretty good. It's never going to be a work of art, but it's certainly going to be a sort of displayable head, and by the time this is inside the diving helmet you're not going to see it anyway, but certainly going to be a lot better than it was when I started. So here we have the outfit having been washed and then dunked in some Sterident for half an hour. And as you can see, it's actually not looking too bad. It's certainly a lot whiter and a lot cleaner than it was. There's still quite a lot of little stains on it, as you can see here. These look almost like rust stains where something has rusted through. Maybe even just the rivets of the Action Man's leg have sort of rusted and left little marks on it. And I can't really see a way of getting those out. So I think I'm going to just have to leave this in this sort of state. To be honest, you can actually pick this little bit of outfit up off eBay for only a couple of pounds. So maybe I could just buy a nicer one of these. And actually this one seems like a late issue of the outfit because it's made of a sort of more nylon-y sort of polyester type material. These gloves are made out of cotton, which is cleaned very nicely, but this sort of more synthetic fabric doesn't seem to have cleaned quite as well. So maybe this is, I think this must be a later outfit. So really the next thing that I need to do is just to repair some of the bits of sewing that have come undone. As you can see here, this bit of elastic has come unhooked there, so I've got to sew that back on, and then again the sort of collar here has come undone. So I've just got some cotton and a needle and a little pair of scissors, and I'm going to work my way around and re-sew all of these little bits and also trim off any sort of loose threads that are starting to come through, and then this should look pretty reasonable. And there we go, I've re-sewed the sort of hem there around the top of this outfit, and also reattached the elastic at the bottom and trimmed up all the little sort of fray ends that were going on around the hands. I'm by no means a great sewer, but I have enough skill that I'm able to do this. For the more complicated stuff I would ask Mrs. Toy-polloi. She is a far better sewer than I am, and she can do some really fine detail work. But I think for something like this, my sort of level of ability is good enough, and it's certainly very hard to tell actually where I've sewn it, so I think I'm pretty happy with that. So we can now get on with the rest of the restoration. It's now been 4 days since I put the oxy on the ink stains on this Action Man head. As you can see, he's looking a lot better. If we compare this to the original look of this figure, you can see that the stains have certainly reduced quite a lot. There's still a little bit of staining under his nose, but this has been having the oxy on it for 4 days, and I think really if it hasn't gone by now, that's about as good as it's going to get. So although it's still not perfect, it's a lot better than it was originally. So we can now go ahead and get the figure put back together. First up, we're going to put the arms back together. Now what you're going to need is some elastic, and I've just been down the haberdashery shop that's nearby here and picked up some of this elastic. It's about 3 or 4 millimeter is sort of thickness elastic, pretty strong stuff, and this should work for both the arms and the head and leg attachment. So we need to tie off a small loop of this elastic, so I'm just going to quickly tie a bit, and it only needs to be, well, almost slightly less than 2 fingers worth, so you can sort of pull the elastic quite taut like so and then tie it off. We should end up with a loop that's about the right sort of diameter. And you want to tie this off quite tight so that the knot doesn't come undone. If I take my fingers out, you'll see that that's quite a small loop, and that should be enough. I'm just going to try and tighten this knot really quite tight, because you really don't want this to come undone inside the Action Man. Once we've got this loop, we can now start threading the arms back together. So I'm just going to trim off the ends of this elastic, because you don't need those, and it just fills up the body cavity with bits of unnecessary stuff. So what we're going to do is going to hook this first piece back on the hook of what is this? This is the right arm of the Action Man, like so. To thread this elastic through the body, I use a piece of string like this. Just thread that through the whole of the elastic that you've got there, and pull the 2 ends together. And then you have to thread this through the body. Now again, this is pretty easy to do. I use a crochet hook because we have lots of these around the house. You can just drop that through the 2 armholes, hook that over the end of the string, and then pull the string through like so. And if we pull all the ends through, we can now pull that bit of elastic into the body. And now this is the awkward bit, because what you've got to do is pull this incredibly taut so that the elastic comes through, and then you can use the crochet hook again just to hook that and keep it in place so it doesn't go back inside the body. And we can now remove that piece of string that I used to thread it through, like so. Once you have the elastic through the body, you can then use the crochet hook just to hook it over the metal loop on the other arm. Now this is a fairly tricky job to do, so I've actually just done this off camera, but you can see exactly what I've done there. I've just used the end of the crochet hook and just quickly sort of looped it over. And then once that's in place, we can unhook the crochet hook and the arm should pop in place. And as you can see, this is now fairly taut and really quite a good strong fix. So now we can move on to getting the head and the legs reattached. Reattaching the legs is a pretty similar process. The only slight difference is the fact that you've got a few more bits. We've obviously got the sort of hip joint here, and what we're going to want to do is to thread the elastic one way through that so that it's already on this sort of piece of elastic, and then we're going to push the elastic into the sort of top of the thigh. And then I've got a pair of tweezers here, these angled tweezers, so that I can go in and grab the other end of the elastic. Just do that like so, and then pull it back through. It's a little bit fiddlier, but it is easy enough to do. And then we can thread this back through the thigh ball like so. Now we can move on to doing the other side. Now we want to attach the second leg to this sort of loop of elastic. At the moment I've got 2 meters of elastic here because I bought quite a lot of it, but you can actually trim this down. So I'm just going to pull this so that we've got one long piece of elastic and 2 ends. And what we've got to do is to thread this through here, so that we've got it through the right, that's the right hand leg of the pelvis, and then we're going to thread it, well, we only need to thread one of them back through the left hand leg like so, so that we can then attach this to the other leg. And do we do the leg in the same way? So we've got to put the ball part through, and then we'll grab his leg again and push the elastic through, and if we get the tweezers we can then grab the end of that elastic like so. Oh, it's getting a bit awkward. There we go, and pull that back through that leg, and then again we can thread it back through the ball like so, and we also want to then thread it back through the leg hole that we've come through, which is there, and then we can start to pull these all together. Obviously if you use a shorter bit of elastic you won't have the massive excess that I have here, but I didn't really want to trim this down so you could see the process. So now there we go, we've got both the legs on. So what we've got is a loop of elastic going through each, and we also need to pull this bottom piece out as well like so, because what you want is a nice loop of elastic like that coming out of the top of the pelvis. So we're now almost in a position to start tying this off and reattaching the head. Working out how much elastic you need between the top of the pelvis and where the neck post attaches is a little bit sort of hit and miss. I tend to work on the fact that if I can get 2 fingers through the loop of elastic, that's about as the right sort of length of elastic. So I've got both bits of the elastic here. We've got 2 ends, so here's one end and another end, and the other loop from the sort of formation of the 2 legs. And what we've got to do is to tie those 2 bits together there, so that there's about 2 fingers worth of elastic, and that should make it taut enough that when we attach the head everything should be pulled nice and tightly. Now I can't tie this while I'm filming, so I'm just going to quickly tie this off camera, but you'll end up with a loop there with a knot at the top of it. There we go, I managed to tie that together. It is the sort of thing that's easier to do when you don't have a camera in front of you, but you can now see I've got the 2 loops of the legs, and if I pull them taut, the legs stay quite nice and firmly in place. So I'm just going to trim off the excess elastic that we have either side here, and then we can start threading this back through the body. To thread the elastic through the body, again I'm going to use a bit of string which I just threaded through both sides of the elastic there, and I'm going to use a crochet hook and push that through the body like so, and hook it onto the piece of string, and then we can pull that string through, and once it's through to the other side I can then use that to pull the elastic out of the head hole. So let's just do that. And you can, as you can see there, pull pretty tautly on the elastic and pull it through the hole. And again I'm just going to carefully hook this crochet hook through both bits of the elastic. Sorry, that was off camera there, but you can see I've now threaded that through so that we can now start attaching the head sort of post onto the elastic here. And again, using this crochet hook I can just reattach the pin that forms part of the neck post. I've actually slightly bent this one just to make it a bit easier, because what you want to do is hook it through the bits of elastic and make sure that it is actually going through like so. You can then bend it back to the correct shape. If you've got a pair of pliers it's much easier. I've actually just done that by hand, but should work. And then we can remove the crochet hook and let the neck ping back into the body, and everything should now be quite nice and taut, and it is, so that's a good sign. If you don't feel that the legs and arms are tight enough, then just take them apart and retie the knots slightly closer together. As you can see here, this is working pretty well, and everything is now not too bad. It's a little bit loose, but considerably better than it was originally. So now go ahead and we'll replace these hands that are still missing. For the hands, I've actually picked up a pair of the 40th reproduction ones. I picked these up from Modeller's Loft. They cost $5.99 for a pair, so not the cheapest of hands, but they're pretty reasonable sort of reproduction. I was hoping to find some original ones, but really original hands are pretty hard to come by and are generally in a fairly sorry state. So for the moment these will do. Now there is a problem with these modern sort of 40th reproduction ones, is that they don't fit particularly well. If I was to pull out this pin for the wrist joint and replace it with this one, these ones just don't fit as well as the original. So what we're going to do is actually just take off the hands from these 40th ones. They're just glued on, so you can just sort of bend the rubber a bit like so, and you can see that the wrist joint actually comes out, so we can then glue this hand back onto the original hand. Again, there's a slight modification that needs to be made because these modern 40th ones, the end of the little wrist peg, if you can see here, is slightly shorter than the original one, so we're going to just have to nip off the end of that. I've got a pair of plastic nippers here, and all you need to do is just gently trim this down just a little bit so it's slightly shorter. If I just do that like so, then this modern 40th one will fit on much better. We've just got to glue that in place and that should look perfect. To glue the hands in place, I'm just going to use a little bit of super glue here and gently dab it on the end part of the wrist peg, so there's a liberal amount over either side and a little bit on the end, and then we can just push the hand in place and we'll let that glue, and that should glue pretty firmly, and then we'll be good to go and we can put the first part of the outfit back together. So that's it for part one of this video. As you can see, Action Man is looking an awful lot better than he did at the start of the video. There's still quite a lot to do. A lot of his outfit is broken, and we're going to cover that in part two of this video. And in the meantime, I'm going to see if I can find out any more details about getting more ink off of his face, because he does look a lot better, but I'm sure there must be a way to get that face looking better than it does currently. So if you've enjoyed this video and would like to help out toy-polloi, then please check out my Patreon page. Links to this are available in the description for this video, and thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching toy-polloi. Subscribe for more great videos. You can also follow toy-polloi on Twitter and Facebook.